Hey everyone, welcome back. So today we're going to talk about 5 reasons why you would actually change your job. So we will be looking at money, we will be looking at personal changes in your life, and we'll also be looking at culture changes that may happen, career progression, and relocation. So these are the 5 main reasons that I've found that people tend to leave their jobs for. So let's kind of explore what these reasons are and what they generally mean for people. So if we're looking at career progression, if we're thinking about, you're working on the floor, you go up to supervisor, you go up to manager, and so on and so forth. There are generally speaking only a a finite amount of positions available within any given company. So naturally, once you've reached that certain stage, you'll obviously plateau in your career. So oftentimes, the best way to get into that career progression and everything else is actually to move companies. Not always the case. It's always better if you can to see if you can get to that position within your own company. But if you've exhausted every other opportunity, in order to do so, it's well within your right to consider opportunities elsewhere. I've personally done this a few times myself. Gone from kind of more copywriter roles to more kind of editorial roles and so on and so forth. And it does kind of bring a whole new lease of life to your career. And sometimes it can be good to just freshen things up from that point of view as well. If we're looking at culture change, this can be done in some couple of different ways. So you can have kind of gradual cultural changes and quite sudden, abrupt cultural changes. So if we're looking at gradual, this is just something that happens over time. Companies, grow and adapt and evolve. People come and go, and that, changes the overall culture of the office or wherever it is that you're working. So you may find over time that the culture just doesn't quite suit you anymore, or it may be a case where the culture is exactly the same, but you're at a certain point in your own life that that particular culture doesn't suit you. One of the more common ones I would have seen would have been something along the lines of, a generally quite young workforce, and then as people got older, they found that the more kind of play hard, work hard lifestyle didn't quite suit people who maybe had kids or maybe want to slow down with things in their own life, want to kind of more of a work-life balance. That would be quite a stereotypical and common example for young professionals. But obviously, there are loads of different examples of that kind of throughout the whole workspace industry. The more abrupt ones is something that I've had some personal experience with in the past, where you have companies that are buying out, they're being bought out by investors and so on and so forth. And you understand, obviously, these smaller companies that are being bought out, they have to obviously show return on investment. So generally speaking, things are start being done differently, not necessarily always for worse, but just differently. And that can lead to certain changes within the organization that reflects on the culture. And that can be quite a strong incentive to push someone outside of an organization. So if that is something that is affecting you right now or has affected you in the past, rest assured that's quite a common reason as to why people tend to leave their current positions. If we're talking about money, it's a bit of a cultural thing. It's some cultures are more pro money than others. But it should never be a case that you feel guilty for going something for more money. However, if that's your only reason for moving on, if it's only purely because of the money, I would implore you to talk with your current employer, and just see if you can fix it, because as we discussed on previous videos like encounter offers, it can be a little bit disheartening to go through the whole process only to suddenly be offered more money while you've just been offered by another company. So if that is a legitimate concern for you and a reason as to why you're looking to move on, it's best just to sit down with your employer and just be frank with them. Say, right, the reason why I'm looking for X, Y, and Z is because I have done, A, B, and C, and that's why I believe I deserve a raise. Because if they may not even be aware, your employer may not even be aware of you, feeling like you're, not being fairly compensated. So having that frank conversation can be quite productive. It'll also save you a lot of headache along the road, because if you like where you work but you just feel you're not being paid enough, it's not a very strong reason to leave. However, that is more for permanent employees. If we're talking about contractors, which I've done a lot of recruitment in before, and I've worked as a contractor myself, money is king. So if you're working on interesting projects and everything else, but then someone comes along with a similar kind of project but twice the pay, well, why wouldn't you go for it? Because you don't have all the benefits, that typically go along with a permanent job, healthcare, sick pay, and so on and so forth. So it does make sense for people to, consider rate of pay when it comes to contracting. Location is a bit of a funny one. So I've worked in a couple of different industries. Typically in my architect roles, they tended to be quite in flux. They tended to go from kind of one site to the next. They tended to kind of move around quite a lot, and location became a big issue for some of my candidates. And so when we were looking at location for people, you have to kind of make sure they're within a certain geographical, area. But on the flip side of that, as well as companies moving around, people move around. Obviously, as of the time of this video recording, we're going through the COVID-19 pandemic. But hopefully, this is in the future and things are a bit more back to normal. But but people do move around, so if you're looking to move for whatever reason, it could be, moving close to a loved one, it could be, you want a fresh start, whatever it is for your personal reason for moving on, that's obviously quite a strong incentive for you to get a new job. Some places, especially the bigger companies, do offer, relocation within the company to a different office. If that's something that you could look at, no reason why you couldn't explore that further. But by and large, most people, if you're looking to move on to fresh pastures, as it were, most people would rather start with a brand new company, because it's kind of like a whole new beginning, a new chapter for you, and everything else. And again, a very common reason for people to looking to move on. Um, Another thing that a lot of people are quite shy about talking about is when it comes to their personal life. Whenever I was interviewing a candidate for whatever position, could be a chemist, a software engineer, or an architect, whatever it was, and they get very, because they're such technical roles, they wouldn't be very comfortable a lot of the time explaining the personal reasons behind why they did things. So you have to remember that when you're interviewing with someone, they're human too. We don't have robot overlord just yet. So they understand the vast majority of the time where you're coming from. So if someone has passed away, if you got married, if your kid, whatever has happened, in your own personal life as to why you decided to move on from either your current job or your previous job, or whatever your scenario may be, it's again quite a human thing. It kind of humanizes the whole experience, and it shows kind of a depth of emotional integrity and honesty from you too as a candidate while interviewing with somebody. So while it has to be approached with tact, absolutely, I would never shy away explicitly from saying, right, never talk about your personal life and everything else, as long as it's, appropriate, you're not going into massive personal detail. There's no reason why you couldn't explain in an interview, this is why I'm looking for this opportunity because of X, Y, and Z. And I think because of A, B, and C, you're able to help facilitate that. And those are the five main reasons, why people like to move on from their current jobs, from what I've gathered over the years, from talking to different people all around the world. Those are the kind of five core reasons, not 10. But obviously, I've got loads more on my blog on recruitersreport.com, link down in the description. If you want to explore this further, I've got tons of other resources online as well. More than welcome to have a look at that too. Plus also, this is obviously a brand new channel, so feel free to like and subscribe. And if there's anything that you feel you'd like to know more about, or want to get more information on, just let me know in the comments. More than happy to tailor to your specific questions. But until then, cheers.